Happy Selection Sunday, everybody. March Madness is in full swing, and the Iceman and the coach are here to watch this take place and see who's going to make the old big dance. What's up, Coach?
Iceman, Selection Sunday is here, and did you just spring a brand new intro video on me that I don't think I've seen? That was fantastic.
I don't think so. I think I used it for when we did the watch party. Oh, actually, you haven't seen it because I used it for whenever we do like a watch party like this. And I think the last time we did one was a national championship. And if I recall, I started that by myself. And so you didn't actually get to see that. So I guess that is new to you, but not new to INC.
Nice. No, I love it, man. That's great. No, super pumped. So all the tournament games are in the books with Illinois topping Wisconsin to win the Big Ten tournament. So now it's just a matter of time here in about 15 minutes or so. The selection show will be beginning, and we will see the field of 68 that gets to play for a national championship. And we've text back and forth about it, but the bubble has been absolutely crazy these last few days. And, we went from, we talk about it a lot on Braves Talk. We went from Indiana State we thought would be most likely in to now I don't think they stand a chance to get in. Now they may, but just so many things have happened, so many bid stealers that it is more than an uphill battle for the Sycamores at this point.
I mean, this year, at the expense of being hyperbolic about it, and that's not what I intend, but normally there are bid stealers, and usually these conferences that are either one bid conference or they have a heavy favorite to win the conference will have a team or teams that sort of go a little bit further than expected. But many times a team that is meant to make the tournament will actually win out and get there. And even this year in the Missouri Valley, where there were 3 contenders for the Missouri Valley title in Arch Madness, any one of those 3 win. And I mean, 2 of them were probably going to make the tournament, but wouldn't have been a surprise, right? So that's not stealing anything. But there have been so many results this year that have been bid stealing is now like a coin term. Like you didn't really hear that all that much in previous years. This year, every single day on Twitter, X, wherever, and on these selection shows, it's bid stealing, bid stealing, bid stealing. And even last night was probably one of the most shocking ones in terms of Power 5 or Power 6, where NC State, who wasn't even sniffing the bubble, wins 5 straight in 5 days to make the big dance, taking away a bid from an Indiana State or a Princeton or some of these schools that had a chance at an at-large bid because their resumes were that good, and they are that good. And so it's kind of interesting to watch all this. I mean, just now, Duquesne, I think, they win the A10, and UAB's on the verge of winning the American. So it's like, these are schools that had no business being anywhere in the NCAA tournament, and now they're in. Brown University, 13-17, was 1 point away from making the NCAA tournament. And that's what kind of makes this exciting.
Oh, absolutely it does. I mean, I think in the A10, the semifinals did not contain any of the top 4 seeds, which is absolutely incredible, right? And then you had Temple get themselves to the championship game, days on the heels of the point shaving scandal and everything else, and there they are competing for an A10 championship and a trip to the NCAA tournament. It's just, this is March, right? As they say, not to be more cliche than necessary, but this is the type of stuff that us folks that just like following college basketball sign up for, man. We want as much of this as possible, and we are getting it by the truckload this weekend for sure.
But it does bring up some philosophical discussions, I think, that are worth having because, and now with the college football playoff this past year with Florida State being left out and the heavy debate that took place both by the pundits and by people like us, and every year around this time, you got Bubble Watch, you have bracketology, many people with opinions about who should be in, deserving, and so forth. And I feel like, and you can correct me, you're more in tune with the college basketball world than I am, but they have made strides over the past few years to make purely quantitative metrics to help those of us like us or even the selection committee to get a better understanding of these teams and their worthiness to make the NCAA tournament. But yet, when you look at the arguments, most of them are purely subjective. They're purely qualitative. Well, they passed the eye test. Well, gut test would tell me that this is a tournament team. And I feel like we're still in this weird position where we're at this juxtaposition of what matters more. what the actual numbers that are there to tell us the story of this team for people that maybe don't watch them all the time, or just I've always known what a tournament team looks like and this is a tournament team. I don't know how you feel about that, but I kind of feel very confused as to which one it is, because if you try to explain that to a layperson, my wife said it sounds subjective to me. And I'm like, wow, I mean, you're not wrong.
No, and as much as they try to make it sound like, hey, here's the criteria. This is what we're looking for. At the end of the day, yeah, when it comes down, even with seating, not just with who gets in and who doesn't, but with seating, I mean, it's purely subjective. And I understand that you have the net. I mean, I would say the biggest factors that they're going to tell you weigh in their decision making are the net ranking, which they created, their strength of schedule in terms of quad one wins, things of that sort. And, any bad losses, I guess, would be the third criteria, which you could take into strength of schedule or whatever. But it's it is interesting though to see how they weigh those different factors from team to team, because there's a chunk of teams that are on the bubble. There are teams that are going to get left out of this tournament that will all be essentially record setters for the highest ranked net to not get in since they've created the net. And I think there's a chance that there's 3 or 4 that will have broken the old record when they don't get in the tournament. And so it is interesting, and much like the RPI, people have learned how to hack the net, right? They've learned how to because the net takes in, it doesn't just take into account when you win or lose and how good those teams are. It takes into account offensive and defensive efficiency and a number of other things. So you can, I mean, theoretically, it may be more favorable for the net to play a weak schedule and beat everybody by 30. That would probably help your net more than some of these maybe 1 point wins against a top 100 net team, a top 50 net team, things of that sort, or even just going and playing those teams like Indiana State, goes on the road, to a couple Power Fives, loses, but they don't get ran out of the gym by any means. But they're not going to get any credit for those games. They're not going to be viewed favorably for taking those games, because at the end of the day they lost. And Michigan State themselves is a bubble team. That's one of the games they lost on the road. But it's so tough. I think it's got to be really difficult at these mid-major programs to schedule to set yourself up to be in position for an at-large bid if you're unable to win your league.
Well, and then you do that and you're not rewarded by doing that, because I think there is such a thing as a good loss. And these mid-major programs, now let's be honest about this. I think you would agree, as a fan of a mid-major program, they're unlikely to win the national championship. And coupled with that, they also are not the teams that your casual viewer wants to see down the road in the NCAA tournament. And so the committee probably takes some of that into account as they're trying to pick these teams and pick these games. But also another factor that has come up in the past, 10, 15 years is the emergence of the conference tournament. And I know I struggle with that as a casual fan, because in so many ways, you have a great season. Indiana State's a good example, or some of these other schools in these fringe mid-major Power 5 conferences. And it's like your entire season is wasted if you don't win the conference tournament. And we talk about regular season conference champs. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. And I struggle with that, because while I think it's cool that you give another team another way to get there, it kind of, I feel like, takes away from the regular season.
Yes, it does. I had a little visitor that snuck downstairs.
Hey,
He's like
this
hanging out.
happens.
I don't know where he came from. He's like hanging out over here in his underwear. But
Hey,
yeah. Anyways, my son, not OG, but
no, God, Lord. Anybody who's here from Braves
my
Talk, no,
3-year-old,
that's not
my
what you want.
3-year-old. No, and you're right. And when it comes down to, you could get punished for this type of stuff or whatever. Just trying to decide, and it is tough at these mid-major programs to schedule. And I look at, let's just go. We talked about Bradley's schedule in the last episode of Braves Talk, and how before the season started, it looked like a really good non-conference schedule. And then just the other night, my dad went through all the numbers, and it's like, man, that's not as good as we thought it was going to be. And now Bradley played 5 teams that are going to be playing 5 of the 10 teams they play, their non-conference, I think, are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament, so just because of the runs they had this weekend. And I see a lot of people out there complaining of, um, well, you shouldn't have the conference tournament champion be the team that gets the auto bid. Well, they don't. I mean, that's up to the conference. The conference can choose to have it be the regular season champ. They have that ability, but they're not going to do that because that would make the conference tournament meaningless, and they're not going to get rid of the conference tournament because of the revenue it generates. So much like so many other things in sports, it's going to be driven by the almighty dollar. And just like you said, when it comes down to people, casual fans wanting to see some of these mid-major programs, or I should say, not wanting to see some of them. It, I think everyone likes a Cinderella for like the first round, the first 2 rounds, and then it's like, okay, like that was cute. Get out of the way. Let's see Kansas and Duke and Kentucky, and Carolina and so on. And it, and it is. They have more fans, right? They have larger fan bases. More people are going to tune in. More people are going to go to the games. And at the end of the day, I'm sure more revenue is going to be generated when you get those larger programs involved. But it's so unique to basketball, college basketball, this tournament, and the hope it provides to some of these lower programs to go in here and get hot for a couple weeks and, kind of go on a run that you become legendary, right, in the world of March Madness. And we've seen that. We've seen it a couple times in the last decade.
There was a UConn team, and I can't remember the guy's name, where he kind of did that at Madison Square Garden, was scoring like 40 points, like 6 overtime games with UConn. But I feel like, and maybe this is unfair, but some of these teams getting in that aren't projected to win, especially teams in these conferences where, like, let's take a Big South, for example. My wife went to Winthrop, and they usually have a very top-heavy conference, probably very similar to the Valley. And this year, Longwood, who was like middle of the pack, middle of the road, wins that conference. Does it water down the field a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I mean, on paper, absolutely it does. But that's what makes this part of this time of year so much fun, I guess. And I hope they don't do what they've done to the NIT, which is where they're saying, used to be you win the regular season, you get the auto bid of the NIT. That doesn't exist anymore. And that's not a thing anymore. And so if they ever did something like that to the NCAA where they said, hey, listen, like winning your tournament no longer gets you an auto bid, that it's going to be we're going to take the best 68 teams period, and that's it. And I'm sure that the power conferences would love that. And at times that would favor maybe the Bradleys, Indiana States, Drakes of the world, other mid-major programs, because if you're going to go off the net rating, all 3 of those teams as of today are in the top 68 in the net, and by that standard would be in the tournament. But does it dilute it? Probably. Does it, at the end of the day, does it really hurt anything? No. Does it give
No,
that school some national exposure? Yes.
sure.
Opportunity to maybe increase enrollment and generate fundraising. And I mean, there's a lot of positives that come out of it that don't have anything to do with basketball.
No, you're
Uh,
right.
but and I think that's kind of what needs to be remembered in all of this.
I mean, pockets are getting lined regardless. And I think it's great that your son is embodying madness this time of year, running around in his underwear. I mean, that's pretty much standard and what's going to happen. But the selection show is coming on now on CBS. And so we're going to react live as this happens over the next hour. A couple things are going to happen in this next hour. We're obviously going to see the teams as the bracket is unveiled. Brad and I will learn in real time who we are going to see later this coming week, starting on Thursday. I think
Yes.
Thursday at noon is the first set of games. And Thursday is gonna, like, my wife actually asked me, she's like, are there breaks in between the games? And I had this realization, like, I don't think so. So it's gonna be injecting March Madness into my veins from like noon probably to like 10:30 on Thursday. So we're gonna find out in real time who we're gonna get to see when we're down in Charlotte starting on Wednesday and the games start on Thursday. And then we'll also are going to take a look at the teams that are getting in. And for the Bradley Braves, any of you that are joining us from Braves Talk, we're going to see how Indiana State fares here, if they're able to sneak in. You never know with the selection committee, right? And then we're also going to try to take a look at who could be in the NIT with teams that are getting in and teams that are left out. So over the next hour, we'll have some things to react to. Make sure to either call or text us with the number that is below on the screen. and let us know in the comments about some of these selections and matchups. So we'll see what happens, but we will get right into it as they get into it. And
Yeah.
as the number 1 seed in the East region is UConn, and UConn has had quite a season, man.
Yeah, you definitely are a smidge ahead of me here. We'll see how it goes. I'm hoping it's not too terribly far
How
ahead of
about
me
this?
because they
How about
haven't
this?
announced it
Why
yet.
don't you announce the schools
No,
as
you
they
go
come
ahead.
on
No,
board?
you go ahead. It's totally fine because as they keep coming up, I'll see them. So
Yep.
that's fine. No,
And
go
coming
for it.
in, 16 seed Stetson, first ever, I believe, NCAA tournament bid for Stetson. So
Nice.
those are the stories that you love to see when schools have never been to the big dance, especially the little schools. And I will tell you, you know how we talked about conference tournaments and how I'm like weird about that? I love the 16 seed play-in game because it gives these schools the ability to get a win in the NCAA
Yeah.
tournament. And you could say
No,
it's padding the
absolutely.
stats, but I think it's fun.
No, I completely agree. And we'll see what
30-minute
happens.
gap.
Oh, maybe he's saying between the games,
Oh,
possibly.
okay. All right.
Um,
And they
in
just
the
announced the 8
NCAA.
9, so I will wait for that. It looks like I think Florida Atlantic and Northwestern is the
Okay.
8 9 right under there. And that's
So I know
always fun.
FAU. There was some talk about FAU since they lost their
Excuse
tournament
me.
if they
Yeah,
would get in.
FAU. Yep. So
Yeah, there
that
was some talk.
these,
That's Florida Atlantic, though. You're right. There
yep.
was
Yeah. These games are taking place in Brooklyn. So these
okay.
are not games that we are going to see. And the next set of games is going to be in Spokane. And we have the 5 seed San Diego State. I think what they usually do is run through like one part of the bracket, then they
Yep.
probably talk about it for a while. And the 12th seed, Bradley opponent, UAB, coming in Spokane against the
I'm su
Aztecs of San Diego State, right?
I'm surprised they got that high of a seed, but you know what? There's been a lot of lesser teams that have gotten in through winning their conference tournament, which is, I guess, drives some of these other guys up,
Yep.
and I mean, UAB is one of them, just not nearly as low.
And rounding out the top half of that bracket, number 4 seed Auburn against number 13 Yale. So the Yale, I think it's the Bulldogs,
Yep.
who won the Ivy League championship today on a buzzer beater, as a matter of fact. Let the madness begin. Okay, bottom half of the bracket's coming up here.
I'm gonna try to kinda keep up on X also as we
Sure.
go and just see if
Mm-hmm.
there's anything that's, any exciting banter. I
Yep.
already see Drake fans
Oh,
upset that FAU got a,
hold
8
on.
seed. Yes.
6-11 matchup is BYU and Duquesne. 11 seed Duquesne winning the A10. So that's always 6-11 is always one of those games that's like interesting. And if Ryan Leskis is out there listening somewhere, the current Big Ten champions, Illinois Fighting Illini, come in at the 3 seed in the Yukon bracket, East bracket. So they will have, I mean, they have a chance to go to the Elite Eight and face off against UConn if it were to happen that way. So we'll find out who some of their roadblocks are. They're going to play Morehead State as the 14 seed.
I saw some people hoping that they would draw Akron because John Gross
Yeah.
was their former head coach, so they talked about how the committee loves storylines, and that would certainly be one.
And these are in Omaha, by the way. So all of these are taking place, or well, not all of these are taking. I think they have a mistake up here. Maybe they don't, but all of these are in Omaha. Number 7 seed in the East, Washington State Cougars.
Wow. There is one I was looking earlier, there is one whole, like, quadrant that is all in the same
Okay, so
location. It
could be
was
that.
Omaha, yeah.
It could be Omaha. By the way, their shirts are Cougars Energy, and I feel like there are a bunch of thirsty middle-aged women. Oh, Washington State will be playing the number 10 seed Drake Bulldogs.
Okay. All right.
So Drake Omaha is not that bad of a draw for Drake, to be honest. Like Des
No,
Moines,
not
Omaha.
at
So
all.
like they should get a pretty good crowd of the Valley fans travel well. Number 2 seed Iowa State in Omaha. That's again that honestly, I would love an Iowa State Drake matchup in the second round. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, in-state matchup, for the
Yes.
2 of them.
Yes.
Their fan bases would travel well to Omaha,
Yes.
and
This
it's a chance for a mid-major to assert themselves in the state of
That's what you
Iowa.
want to see in March Madness, my man, is you want to see that stuff. And rounding out the East bracket is South Dakota State as the 15 seed.
Okay, all right. I see that the Drake feed is doing that's how far behind I am.
I know. But no, I like Drake at a 10 seed is, I mean, I know they won the Valley, but like that's a great look for the Valley. A 10 seed as a conference champion. I mean, 10 seeds have made noise before, so
Sure.
I mean,
No,
there's a lot to
absolutely.
like in this. There's a lot to like in this bracket. I think that UConn winning. You got Florida Atlantic, who I believe was a Final Four team. Was it last year or the year before? One of these 2 times. I can't remember exactly, but I know was it Florida Atlantic who made a run?
Yeah, yes, it
Yeah.
was, yes.
And so I'm always intrigued by the 8-9 matchup because you get a team like Florida Atlantic, who again coming off of a Final Four run. I think it was last year. Somebody can correct me in the comments, but and then you play a UConn, right? Those are the types of matchups in March Madness that always are, ooh, you never know because you
Yep.
get an experienced team who's been there before, and the number in front of them doesn't necessarily tell you how good or like how dangerous they could be.
Sure, and something happened in this region that would impacts us, and that is Iowa State staying on the 2 line and not
Yes,
moving up to the last number 1 seed and moving North Carolina down, because that would have changed
it
the
would have
group of
changed.
teams that we would have gotten in Charlotte, because North Carolina is gonna get sent to Charlotte, no doubt.
Oh yeah, I honestly I didn't think because actually we were watching that game last night and Chrissy asked me if since they were losing, do you think they'll lose the number one seed? And I was like, I don't think so. I think they'll be the fourth number one seed, so they'll probably get the hardest draw to wherever they're going to go. But I don't think so because they had a really great year and they ran into a team that if it doesn't happen very often, no team in ACC tournament history had ever won 5-5. So they just ran into a team that is the hottest team right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see like NC State in maybe one of the playing games or something like that. And those are the types of teams that could get dangerous because then you play, you know what I mean? Like it's or no, they can't be in a play-in, but you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
um, they're kind of teams you don't want to see. Maybe a 12 or 13.
Well, VCU went on a run, I think, one of
Yep.
the years they won their own Shaka Smart, they came out of the playing game.
They came, yes. I forgot that an automatic qualifier can't be in the play-in, although I think that's horseshit, by the way. But I get why they do it.
But isn't that the case with those 16s? Aren't those conference champs?
I don't
In the
know about
16
that.
play-ins? I'm pretty sure they are.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure
yeah,
those are
they are,
AQs.
yes. But I thought the 11s were like the last four in, so they were like the
Yeah,
last four at large bids, which
yeah.
I understand. Like you want to do that.
Which
You
we
know,
haven't
I
seen those yet, right?
no, no, we have not seen those yet. I
And
don't
also,
because
I
I
think they
think
said that they think that the play-ins they think are gonna end up being 10s
oh,
because of
really?
how good those teams are.
That would be fairly interesting because, I mean, so the other thing about this year that or actually, I think this is across the board because we're at a commercial break now. So we'll get to the next bracket. And one of the things that has happened, and we talked about this on Braves Talk as it relates to the Valley, but transfer portal and NIL has leveled the playing field overall. So if you look at how top heavy the NCAA tournament used to be, the reason why a number one seed had never lost to a 16 until the last 5 years or whatever, 6 years, is because the chasm between the Power Five and all the other schools was massive. And now what you see a lot of, I noticed this last year where it seemed like every single team in the tournament had some guy who was a transfer,
Yep.
and it's like these mid-major schools are getting these guys, and then some of them are transferring to these Power Five schools. And so that's why you get a Drake that's a 10 seed, right?
Well, and it's going both ways, right? It's not just they're losing their best players to Power Fives, but you're getting some of these guys that want to play more that aren't playing at Power Fives that are
Yes.
leaving to go be a starter and a stud at a mid major. So I mean, it's a two-way street. Now, I feel like we haven't seen as much success, obviously, in coming down to the mid major level, but there certainly are some cases of it, and I think that that is leveling the playing field. Um, in these different situations. And like I think you were alluding to, players are probably more willing to take a chance to go somewhere at a lower level, knowing that after 1 year, if they perform, they can move on and uh, take the bag and and go play at a power five at that point.
Or even a couple of years. I mean, look at Rink Mast, right? He's at
Yeah.
Nebraska. Nebraska, I think, is going to be a tournament team. I think
Marcus
they were
Damask at Illinois.
Yeah, and I think they were a lock to make the tournament. And he hasn't been a support player, a role player. He's actually been producing. I mean, and so there's so many more opportunities now. But you talked about it in reverse. Look at Malavai. He's a guy who played really well at Bradley, 1,000 points, defensive player of the year 2 times in a row. Like he's going to go down as a legend in Bradley basketball history in that regard because he was such a solid player, did so many things, and he was able to not only do that, but also get paid. I mean, there is a nice thing about being paid in college. I will say that because I was broke.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, the system needs fixed just because right now it is kind of the Wild West. But at the same time, like right now, you might as well take advantage of it for what it is because in pretty much every other business that exists, it's about how much money you can make right now and long term both. But I don't blame these kids one bit for what they're doing. It's not their fault. I'm not gonna. I don't think it's an indictment on their character. Or anything else, they're just taking advantage of the situation,
Yeah, that is
and
correct.
there's nothing wrong with that.
So they are back with the South region, and we have the number one seed in the South is Houston, and they will be playing aforementioned Longwood out of the Big South. So that'll be. And speaking of Rink Mass, the number 8 seed is the Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's going to be really, really fun to watch.
A tough draw for the Cornhuskers, though, having to see Houston in round 2.
Yep, and this is in Memphis, so this is not us. They're going to make us sweat this out, by the way. Oh, man. Buzz Williams and the Texas A&M Aggies coming in at the 9 seed in the
They
South
got
region.
in.
They did. Well, to be fair, they got super, super hot and beat locks, like all these tournament locks on the way out. Now, I do wonder sometimes if like these resumes are like padded at the end and we're not looking at the whole season, but hey, whatever. I'm not going to complain. Number 5 seed playing in Brooklyn, which we almost went to, the Wisconsin Badgers.
Okay.
Whitest team in the union. It looks like, I mean, no, they're showing them on TV, and there is 7 white guys that are right here. So they are breaking the mold playing that many white guys. It's pretty unbelievable. Okay. Virginia Tech was not that lucky this year. And they're playing the James Madison Dukes. Okay. Oh, I like that. I like that because Wisconsin, I think, maybe this year a little bit different, always plays a more conservative offensive style. Like they've always struck me as that kind of thing. And James Madison is a team that is kind of emerging in both football and basketball, 31-3. I don't care what conference you play in. That's incredible to win 31 out of 34 games. That's a matchup that I'm circling for upset alert. And the number 4 seed is the Duke Blue Devils playing in Brooklyn.
All right. Let's see who we get at 13 then.
Duke JMU would be amazing. I would be all like inject that in my veins. I want that. And they play the Vermont Catamounts, another Bradley, but former opponent.
That's right.
I remember the 2005 Vermont team that went on a run to the Sweet 16 because the high school I went to, their point guard played at our rival.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting. And we're moving on to Pittsburgh now, where Texas Tech is the 6th seed.
All right. Texas Tech is the 6
against the 11 seed NC State Wolfpack, coming off a heater.
Have we still not seen a play-in?
We have not seen a
10 or
play-in
11
yet.
outside the 16? Or
So
no, we haven't even seen the 16.
Bottom half of the South bracket is in Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. So we will not see Charlotte in this portion of the bracket. Where it's going to be like the last 4 games, I feel like.
The suspense builds.
I mean, it's kind of fun that way because it's like I almost feel like we're watching to see if we're getting in the tournament. That's kind of how it feels.
Oh, and well, we know we're in.
I know.
We just got to figure out who we're going to be rooting for.
Yep. And John Calipari's Wildcats come in at the number 3 in Pittsburgh, and they will face off against the 14 Oakland. I can't remember their mascot's name.
Like a bear or something.
Yeah, something like that. That doesn't make any sense, probably.
No. It's probably honestly a different name for a bear.
And playing in Indianapolis, the number 7 seed, your SEC champions. Oh, no, your runner-up in the SEC, the Florida Gators.
And that was a team that I think needed to not do well. One or the other, but they were definitely, they impacted the bubble. I know that.
And their first playing game is a 10 seed. It is Boise State, and we come in Colorado Buffs.
Yeah, so we are getting those at the 10. All right.
That's a sign of a healthy tournament right there, where your playing game is almost a single-digit seed. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that's interesting that they have the ability to do that. I've kind of, this year I've paid more attention than I ever have. And so to see the way that I'm getting a better understanding of how the bracket all comes together and how it works.
And the number 2 seed, Shaka Smart's Marquette. Now,
Golden Eagles, I believe.
Golden Eagles, and they will be facing off against the Hilltoppers of Western Kentucky. Now, Marquette is a team that I mark as questionable. I know they had a great season. The reason I say that is because they went 0-3 against UConn, and not many of the games were particularly close. So I don't know if they stack up in terms of can they win in the biggest games during this time of year. And I'm not saying, Shaka Smart's a great coach. He's obviously been to the Final Four at VCU, but he hasn't really had teams that have done well since then. And so that'll be a team to watch, not necessarily for an upset against Western Kentucky, but next round, Sweet 16 type thing like that. That to me screams a team that you don't want to pick to go to the Final Four and have your bracket ruined early.
Right. Dad, I got it. What's the old brother for, man? You got to fill us in.
I'm sure
curious.
It's something about the Valley that he's just sitting there. He's probably got 2 TVs. He's watching Selection Sunday and
Bradley highlight films from the 80s.
That's right. Not from the Geno Ford years, as we discussed the other day. So that will not be happening. So the South region is interesting because it's a lot of teams in here, right? Houston has had a extremely successful run, not quite to the Phi Slamma Jamma years, but definitely have had a really good string of success. And there's teams in here that, you got a playing game. You got a team in NC State that is like Virginia Tech a couple years ago where they made that run, but then they ran out of gas because it's hard, man. You
Yeah.
like play super, super hard. And so this, to me, I don't want to say feels like an easier draw because, Duke is obviously very good. Marquette's very good. Kentucky is always dangerous, but feels like it's a pretty good run here for Houston to get to the Final Four, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would at least on paper, right? Visually, it
Yes.
does appear
Yes.
favorable. And another fact about Houston, coached by Ralph Sampson,
Yep.
who played at the same time when Phi Slamma Jamma was
Yep.
going on, and probably likely played against those guys at some point, I'm guessing, in his time at Virginia. So I think that just kind of comes full circle, I suppose. And he's done a
Wasn't
great job there. There's no
wasn't
denying that.
he the coach of Oklahoma for a long time and had to leave because of allegations and stuff like that? And now when you look back on it, it's like
Don't
that.
know.
I feel like he did, but I can't remember. I thought he was head coach at Oklahoma for a while. I'm not thinking of Bruce Pearl. Like Bruce Pearl had so many allegations at every single place that he went, but I loved him. I thought he was a great motivator. Great. You know, Bruce Pearl was like the anti Kim Mulkey, right? He wasn't a villain, but he was so flashy that people probably hated him because of that. But to me, he didn't have the same like. I got the sense the other day that the South Carolina LSU thing, which I thought was totally overblown. It is what it is. They're competitors, right? And she's out
Sure.
here being like, I think she wanted to be a part of the fight. Like, I think that
Yes.
if she wouldn't have lost her job, she'd been throwing fists. Like, there's just you cannot convince me that she didn't want that. And
Oh, absolutely. She wanted that. She wanted all that smoke, man. And I
oh my
watched.
goodness,
I saw some clips on X that someone posted of her playing for Louisiana Tech in the NCAA tournament, and like she is. I mean, she's tiny, and obviously was tiny then compared to these women she was playing against. But she was tough and scrappy. I mean, exactly as you would expect, I guess, based off what we see from her now.
yes. Says the guy who refers to himself in the third person as the OG. This guy over here talking about us being picked. It was a joke.
Oh gosh. I was gonna ask if I was because they were going through the little montage of showing all the teams celebrating, seeing their names. It's like, shoot, man, we should have gotten some confetti and everything when they announced the Charlotte
Well,
teams.
speaking of which, did
Oh,
you see that they shot the confetti off early for the Duquesne confetti for the A10 tournament? It was like
I
in,
did,
yeah.
yes.
It's like, is there a script?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, mid major is gonna mid major, I guess, in every way, shape, or form. And I say that as a mid major supporter.
Well, I know. I mean, it's just more of a like the person who's in charge of that hit the button probably wasn't paying attention. You know what I mean? But I think your dad, not making fun of us this time, actually has a good point when he's talking about mid majors have an opportunity. I think that's correct. I mean, that South bracket is a perfect example of that because there's a lot of names in there, right? Duke, Kentucky, but these are not the same Dukes and Kentuckys of
Yeah,
yesteryear, in my
not your
opinion.
daddy's Duke.
No, I mean, look, I will tell you, I think is it what's the guy's name who is the coach of Duke now?
John Shire.
Shire. I was gonna say John Cryer, but that's the guy from Two and a Half
Said
Men.
John
But
Shire.
John Shire, it's close. John Shire, and I mean to be fair, right? He has done a great job succeeding Mike Krzyzewski. It's not easy to be the guy who immediately follows the guy, but to have that team where they are in today's world where you can't recruit on just what you've done before. I have to say, I expected a bigger dip from Duke, so I think that's something to be proud of if you're John Shire, in my opinion.
Do you think that Kalen DeBoer called him before he took the Alabama job and said, "Hey, man, what's it like following a legend?"
If he was
Um,
smart, he'd have called a lot of people
yeah,
doing that because look at what happened. I mean, North Carolina's doing pretty good after Roy Williams, but it took a little bit to sort of get to where they are. It wasn't like they took a huge dip, but if he was smart, he called a lot of people who have succeeded the guy. And now we are
yeah,
back the Midwest region, and we are starting in Indianapolis with the number one seed Purdue Boilermakers, who got
no surprise there.
no surprise there. Nope, in Indianapolis. And they will play a 16 play-in game Montana State, and Grambling State.
Okay.
Now,
And
if this was a marching band competition, Montana State would be in trouble.
and my dad was talking about, do you think, almost like he was implying that these higher teams are throwing tournament games to get more teams in, and maybe keep some of the mids out. And I'm like, no, what you have is you have a team that's playing for everything, playing against a team like Purdue that has nothing to play for. That's the case you have in some
I
of these
agree.
power tournaments.
I mean,
And
there's no extra benefit sometimes when you're Purdue because, like, you're going to be a number one. You're not going to drop, most likely. And the 8-9 matchup, I believe another Bradley opponent, the Utah State Aggies, was that another Bradley
yep,
opponent?
yep, another team Bradley beat.
Yeah, against the TCU Horned Frogs. So this is basically like if they were to put a tournament together of all of Bradley's exes, this would be it apparently because that's what we're dealing with here. All right, moving on to the 5 seed. This is in Salt Lake City. The Gonzaga Bulldogs. Mark Few, they got in. Obviously, they took a downturn over the last couple years of success that they had, and they will be playing McNeese.
That's a mid-major that had a really good season. I
And
don't
they
know a
have
lot about them.
great. I don't know. You get the great shot here of at their arena with this crowd. Like they're doing the WWE thing where they're doing like the hard camera where they only show the one side, but man, it looks lit in there.
Yeah, I'll see it here in a minute. Drum roll.
Yep. And so
We got
rounding
a
out the top.
4-13.
Yep, rounding out the top half of that will be the number 4 seed Kansas Jayhawks. I believe Bill Self has a lifetime contract with the Jayhawks.
I get actually, like, that's a thing. Like,
I think
factual.
so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and they will be playing Samford as the 13 seed. That feels. Kansas is a team you never could trust them, right? But I think Bill Self has won a national title, but this team is not that team. This is a very weak Kansas team. If you look at them comparatively, that's a matchup I'm circling on that bracket for sure.
Bradley's got to win over Kansas as a 13 seed. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
I'm telling you. So 29-5, that's a great season again. Again, it doesn't matter who you play. It's hard to win that many games. That's why Indiana State. All right, Pittsburgh. Oh, we got Charlotte at the bottom of this bracket here. So we will be seeing something finally, but I have to wait now. So I can't. I think it's the 6th seed in, what did I say this was? The Midwest region, 6th seed, South Carolina Gamecocks against the Ducks of Oregon, and that will be in Pittsburgh. If that were football, it'd be great.
Yeah.
Not saying it won't. I'm not saying it won't be great, but all right. Number 3 seed in Pittsburgh, Creighton Blue Jays. Is it Blue Jays?
Yep.
Former mid-major who has really,
Former Missouri Valley member.
I know, right? Like Creighton is a great example of a team that has worked up and just continued to get better and better, and that's a testament. And they will be playing Akron, who is the 14th seed.
Another Bradley opponent.
And now we will be getting a 7-10 and a 2-15. This will be in Charlotte on Thursday.
I think the 2 is going to be Tennessee. And
the number 7 is the Texas Longhorns.
Okay, yep, that sounds like things. That's what I've been seeing. Texas.
Oh, great. We get the play-in, Virginia, Colorado State.
The winner of that. Okay, so you get a chance to see UVA lose if they win.
I'm rooting for UVA to win the play-in so I can root for them to lose in that game. Worst. And now we're going to find out the 2 seed. I think you're right. I think it's going to be Tennessee, but we'll find out here in a minute. So we know we're going to be seeing a 10 seed coming from a playing game, and the 2 seed, the Tennessee Volunteers.
And 15 seed Colgate is my guess.
Let's see. That's a good guess. Could be Colgate. Could be. I'm trying to think of some of these other. I think didn't St. Peter's get in?
Yeah.
They might be a 16 play-in. You never know. Because I think they weren't supposed to be here either. They were
in the West or whatever.
Run. Yeah, could be. So we'll see. St. Peter's, the 15 seed. Okay. So we're going to get yes. Okay. So first set, we are going to get to see Texas and the winner of Virginia, Colorado State, and then Tennessee and St. Peter's. So I mean, that's good. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with that draw because we're going to get some really good. You got Texas, obviously. You should get a good draw with Tennessee. They should bring a lot of fans there. Obviously, this is not St. Peter's. Yeah, not the St. Peter's team that went to the Elite Eight, but still, it's like the ghosts exist.
The ghost.
You know what I'm saying?
St. Peter's past.
Well, it's like it's one of those games where if St. Peter's is up early in the second half, that's when teams start to play tight, and that's when these things start to like snowball on themselves. And it's like the announcers start talking about St. Peter's. you know that the players are thinking about it, and it just is one of those where it if things don't go right, you never know. But this is again not that St. Peter's team, so this would be, I think, a massive upset. They were 19-13.
Yeah, I would, but you never know. We'll see, man. And in those types of games too, you see the whole crowd will get behind them if it's close. You
Yes,
know, I imagine, and it'd be fun to be a part of something like that. I hope that
I
we
agree.
see at least one good upset, and it would be epic if we can see one of these uh, lower seeded teams win both games.
I want to see a buzzer beater. I don't care who ends on the other side of that, but that's what I want to see. So that means obviously the number one seed in the West
West,
region will
yep.
be North Carolina, probably. And so that will be our next set of games, most likely, is that you're going to see North Carolina. But who do they play? And then who is the 8-9 matchup? Because again, we're going to be watching all these games and we're looking for upsets. So those 8-9 matchups that we're going to get to see on Saturday could be fairly interesting.
Yeah, and that's a team that's likely good enough to give North Carolina problems on
Yes,
day 2.
I agree. Especially, I mean, I don't know about the other 8s and 9s, but you never know. You get a team that, I mean, because North Carolina did not play well against NC State, and you could make the argument that it didn't matter to them, but also that's a rivalry game for them. Like that's their in-state rival. So losing in the conference championship, I don't care what anybody says. Like you should not be phoning that game in whatsoever.
Yeah, maybe though that's what they needed. That was just the right thing at the right time to get them refocused and go after what really matters here in a national championship.
Yeah,
We've talked a lot on this podcast about how losses like that can sort of be a catalyst to something better, and
that
could be
is
that sort
very
of
true.
opportunity.
Well, I am excited because I think so far the games that we know about, add in North Carolina, most likely it would be a shock at this point if it was anybody else. I think we're going to get some. I mean, Texas, North Carolina, these are passionate fan bases. Maybe not traditionally basketball passionate, but passionate in and of itself. Tennessee, obviously, and I think that's great because like you and I don't have a horse in this race,
Nope,
and so I mean, unless Indiana State somehow gets stuck in there, but like I don't think that's going to happen.
probably not.
So
No.
at this point, since we haven't seen them yet, they're not getting in. And do you think they know? Like, do you think
They're
that they know?
probably, I would think so at this point. I mean, you mean like, do you think they've been like notified
No,
type
I
of
mean,
thing,
do
or
you
that
think
they
that
just
like
like they just know that
in their
too much
heart of
happened?
hearts they
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Then I absolutely, and like you said, they haven't shown them at all. It'd be funny if like they do make it and like all of a sudden like they show like live from Terre Haute and it's like one janitor they have sitting there watching a
You
TV in
don't think
case they do
they're
make it
having
or
a
something.
but like they even though they might know in their heart of hearts, like because the one thing that'll tell me something, and I don't know if this is telling or not, is they haven't shown Terre Haute yet, which leads me to believe that even if they do have a watch party, just in case that they're not going there, which leads me to believe that the production crew seems to know something that we don't.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't doubt that there's a watch party going on because why not? Why not celebrate even the possibility of it? Knowing it's a long shot at this point, unfortunately. But that's why I'm saying it'd be great if they live from Terre Haute and it's just like they're like sleeping or something.
It's just Robbie Avila doing his drills,
Yeah.
looking like Nikola Jokic out there.
And he like gets out his phone and he's like, "We made it!" That'd be a great commercial. He's like out there like
That would be actually. That would be
dribbling or
fantastic.
whatever, and like his phone buzzes and he pulls it out and looks at it.
Yep. All right, they are back from this broadcast. They actually moved through this. I mean, it's 6:30, so I assume they're going to go through the rest of this bracket, and they're going to spend a vast majority of this at the end
Breaking it
talking
down.
about who's going to upset, breaking it down, and all that stuff. So we're going to get into it here. It looks like we have the last portion of this bracket, which is very, very exciting. And let's see what we got going on. And we have the West, and as predicted, the North Carolina Tar Heels are the number one seed there. So another, like I said, another great fan base, and we should get a lot of obnoxious UNC fans in Charlotte for sure.
How sweet would it be to see North Carolina get beat in Charlotte
Well, let's
in
see who
front
they're
of?
playing first. Maybe that would be, oh my god, if a 16 beats a one while and they will, oh well, there's a little bit of a hometown feel here because they get the winner of Howard and Wagner. So Howard, I think,
Okay.
making their second straight NCAA tournament bid. It's a very big HBCU here in downtown DC. I know a few people have gone there, so that'd be great. And the 8 seed, Mississippi State, coming
All
in
right.
Charlotte. Yep, this is exciting. And the last team that will be a part of what we will get to see is the Michigan State Spartans. So
Okay.
another great, great fan base. We are going to have a ball watching these fan bases. And Michigan State is always a team. If they win that first game against North Carolina, that's a watch out game for sure.
Yeah, and you know what? We've got like just in this little quadrant here, we got two. I mean, I'll say that, you could I'll call Michigan State a blue blood,
Yes, they are, I think.
and that might be a reach for some people, but I have no problem giving them that designation. So we
Especially
got
come tournament time. Like they're one of
yeah.
those teams. So the 5 seed is the Gales of St. Mary, and they will be playing. I love Grand Canyon. I love that. Like that's a team that blew through the West Coast Conference.
Have you ever seen clips of their like they do like a Midnight Madness when they
Oh, it's
start a
insane.
season and it's like off the charts. Yeah.
Back when Patino was still at Louisville, they played a road game at Grand Canyon, and he said it was the loudest environment he'd ever coached in.
Well, it's probably the smallest. I mean, I'm guessing it's just basically a large high school gym, which is
Maybe.
fine. Nothing.
Yep. And the 4 seed in the West is the Crimson Tide of Alabama, and they will face the Cougars of Charleston.
Okay. All
Yep.
right. So
Charleston
there's
last year was a team that had an exceptional season, and they had a little bit of a dip this year, but that could be a dangerous team, kind of similar to FAU in that respect.
there's still a 10 and an 11 seat on the board that
There are,
that,
and now we're
that the
getting to
Sycamores could sneak into.
the number 6 seed in the West are the Clemson Tigers. Now, at one point, they were projected to be in Charlotte as a 7, so they
I did
moved
see
up.
that.
Yep. They moved up, and they will play the Lobos of New Mexico.
Okay, that was a bid stealer. That's a bid stealing team right
It
there.
was a bid stealer. We've seen a few of them. I think Colorado was one of them. Now, Colorado was probably in, but they obviously were a play-in team, so they were one of the last 4. Oregon was a bit. There were so many of them that I think it became mathematically impossible. And so the 3 seed in the West are the Bears of Baylor,
Okay.
and they are
Go.
playing Colgate.
All right. Wow, Colgate really moved up, man. Maybe I saw
14?
yeah,
Yeah.
I saw him as a I mean, I think I saw him everybody for the longest time had him as a 15, but
Yep. And the number 7 seed, and this is out in Salt Lake, are the Flyers of Dayton, formerly out of the A10, right? I don't know where
yeah,
they are now.
they're in
Big
the
East?
A10 still.
A10
They're still
still?
in the
Are they?
A10. They'd be a good
Oh,
fit in the
that's
Big
right.
East probably,
And they
but
will play Nevada as the 10th.
they also are at fault for
Wolfpack.
if they would have won the tournament, that would
So
have taken away
yep.
Duquesne's opportunity.
It's looking like unless the Sycamores are a 2 seed or the 15
Yeah.
seed, that it looks like they're
They
not
are
getting in,
solidly
unfortunately.
out, man. Like, and you know what's
Yep.
funny? I don't think there have been based on this NIT breakdown I have in front of me. I don't think there's a single team on here that has
Nope.
snuck in.
Nope. I mean, Oklahoma was a team that people thought might sneak in. That Lenardi had them in his last 4 in when I saw it the last time. So Porter Moser can take his ball and go to Duquesne and then not. Okay, so rounding out the entire bracket, the Arizona Wildcats are the number 2 seed, and they will face Long Beach State as the number 15, and that is out in Salt Lake. So that is your full bracket. We know exactly what is happening. I'm not going to lie to you. Outside of wanting to see like a 6-11 or like a 4-13, some of those seeds that are closer for more upsets, the fan bases that we're going to get to hopefully interact with. I'm not going to promise that we're going to put it on camera or anything, but just to get to interact with some fans and do some of that stuff, that I'm looking forward to it because we got a great draw with that. There's going to be some passionate fans there. The arena should be lit because Michigan State will travel well, Texas will travel well, Tennessee, North
Tennessee.
Carolina. Like, we should not have an empty arena at all.
No, I wouldn't think so, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really excited to see what the schedule looks like as far as who plays when, because I think if you get a couple of those fan bases together at later in the day after they've had time to get themselves prepared for battle, it could be interesting. It's going to be a blast, man. And the tournament always is a great time. And I know you and I talked about it. I don't know if we're going to roll with it or not, but doing an Iceman and Coach bracket challenge or
Yes, we
something
are.
like that. So,
That's a good
um,
segue for your dad who's watching here. He can fill out his bracket. Anyway, we will be doing a bracket challenge, and so the entire premise of this is Nostra James will be doing a bracket. Now he will be doing a bracket solely based on mascot names, and for proof of his bracket, he will be holding up the paper version of it, and he and my wife are going to be doing the bracket together so that we can post it here. But we're going to make a group. It might do it on ESPN. That's the app that I have. We can do it on CBS. Doesn't matter where. The idea is we're going to do a bracket challenge. Everybody who participates in it, whoever wins it, we are going to send them a prize, most likely an INC branded Yeti cup of some kind. And so that will be the prize at the end of the road. You have one, your dad has one, I have one, and it may not be that one. It may be a smaller version of it, but that's kind of the idea, is to reward somebody for being really great at getting lucky and give you some INC swag out the door. And I'm also looking forward to seeing if we can get some NCAA tournament swag while we're there and spend like $800 on a t-shirt.
Um, it's funny because I usually steer clear of swag like in the moment at places
Sure.
because I'm so I guess I'm one of those people that I'm able to rationalize like in that moment in time of like I will probably never wear this again other than for like the next 2 days, or whatever,
Maybe,
something
yeah.
like that. And I'm
So
able to talk myself out of it sometimes.
not to interrupt you, but they're doing the last four in, last four out. The
Oh,
Sycamores were part of the first four out. Oklahoma, Seton Hall, Indiana State, and Pitt were the first four out. Looks
yep.
like Boise State was one of the last four in. So, and the
Number
graphic is now gone.
29, number
Yep.
29 net
Yes.
left
Yep.
out of the NCAA tournament.
Well, and it speaks to what we talked about before, is that, I mean, and you have said this, and it was not any type of shade that you were throwing at Indiana State, but they figured out a lot of ways how to hack the net and get up into where they needed to be. But some of their deeper metrics, their only quad one win was against Bradley, which is a
Yeah.
testament to Bradley. Actually, you look at it now, Bradley has how many quad one wins? All these teams that got into the NCAA
Yeah, I
tournament, they
mean,
should redo the Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if they're like, we relooked at Bradley's resume, and because all these teams made it, we threw them in there because, geez, I mean, I
well,
would
that's
love to
what it is.
know.
It is like it is those wins, those you get credit for what those wins are, not at the time they happened, but like as of right now. So like while like the Vermont win may have been a quad 3 win, possible it's probably a quad 2 win at the time, but it probably still is a quad 2 win. But my point is that it can get better or worse over the course of the season depending on how that team performs. You know what I mean? Which is it's a good thing that it works that way. I would rather have it work that way than you only get credit for how it was on the day you played them, because then you get credit for that team's full body of work, and that's obviously boded well for Bradley. I think I looked earlier and they had climbed into the 50s in the net or whatever. So it's, I mean, just and they haven't played a game. They were
Yeah.
like 63 the other day, or yesterday morning, and then today they're like 58 or something, or 56. I can't remember what it was, but it's it's just so funny, man, the way this stuff works out. And I mean, UVA was an at large, right? And their
Yes.
net was in the
No.
50 or
Well, they were one of the last four in, because
yeah,
they're obviously in a playing game. Colorado State, Boise State, can't remember the other playing game, but I mean they're playing in at a 10. So like
right.
honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you. When I look at those last four teams in, I think Indiana State could beat UVA, like on a neutral court, and the way they played against UNI in Arch Madness, they could beat any of those teams that got in.
Yeah, and that's dude, and that's my thing about it. And I'm not even saying this as like a Valley homer or a mid-major homer, anything. It's when you look at the metrics that the NCAA, the selection committee, these are the metrics that they say matter. And you have Indiana State, who's nearly 20 points higher in the net, 20 positions higher than UVA. You know what I'm saying? And I understand they're in the ACC. The ACC traditionally one of the best basketball conferences in the country. I've seen some people say they think that the ACC is actually underrated this year. Um,
I don't know
you
about
know,
that.
but I don't either. I saw that, I was like, "Ah, that's interesting." And I think their point is it's deeper. Like how NC State being able to win, that just shows the depth of the ACC, where I think you and I would look at it and say, well, that just shows maybe how down the top is compared to the past. So I don't know. I get, obviously they looked at Indiana State's strength of schedule and the quad one wins, and I'm sure that's what kept them out at the end of the day. But god dang, man, like, and they're not the only one. I'm sure some of those other teams that were left out in the first four out um, are tournament teams. But my goodness, man, Indiana State is a tournament team,
I mean,
and it's a
every so
shame.
often though, right? Some of these teams that get in that people say shouldn't get in, validate them getting in by making a deep run. And Bradley did the same thing, the famous Billy Packer rant. And I think that was one of the years where they made a Sweet 16 run, right?
Yeah,
It was that year.
beat Kansas and Pitt.
Yeah,
Speaking of
exactly.
your Bill Self point, yeah.
Well, yeah. And I think that I think Indiana State also suffered from the fact that their conference tournament was so early. And that's one of the things about the criteria of what we talked about here, in that so much of this last week was resume padding. And Indiana State doesn't get to do that, right? They don't get to, because their conference, when they play their conference tournament, they don't get to play. Like, they beat Drake. That probably, obviously, they would have been an automatic qualifier, but had they played Drake earlier and beat them and still lost in the conference tournament, that at least is a quad one win for them, because Drake 1 obviously was a quality program this year. But like, they don't get to resume pad, whereas some of these teams that are coming in ice cold, and then all of a sudden NC State gets to pad their resume. I mean, even looking at bracket or bubble watch before the ACC tournament, and they're like, if Virginia Tech wins today and then wins the next game, they're in. And I'm like, horseshit, they're 18-14. Like, that is not a
Right.
like. And they've beaten bubble teams, they've lost to bad teams. And like, how in the world is that possible? Like, that's crazy. That
And
is,
in the
you know,
Yeah, and in the football world, like, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so, like, I'm a fan of a team that's kind of the benefactor a lot of times of, well, it's Notre Dame, and it's just whatever they do gets valued at a higher rate than, um, other teams at times, other programs, and in the past, at times, undeservedly so. I think they're moving in the right direction now, story for another day, but, no, I totally get it, man, like, it's very bizarre how they and I mean, Indiana State and Drake, they split during the regular season, and then they played one of the best college basketball games I've ever seen for the Valley Championship. Um, and I don't know what more you could, yeah. And the 2 games that they lost, they dropped 2 or 3 in a row right towards the end of the season, but they lost to Evansville and Illinois State without one of their starters, and, like, the committee has said they take that shit into consideration, and I see the commissioners, of the SECs on there now, or
SWAC, actually.
Thwack,
Yep.
my goodness. And
Yep.
that's another thing I saw. Someone said that the committee had a lot of, mid-major, high mid-major, influence on it as far as the makeup of it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like, that shouldn't matter. Like, you should put the 68 teams that you're supposed to have in there, but Indiana State should be one of them.
I mean, let's say a couple things. First thing I want to tell you is that, interestingly enough, the last number 1 seed was North Carolina. The first number 2 seed was Tennessee. So interesting that that directly affects us. That could have flip-flopped and actually,
Time.
dedicated. Oh, great. Well, he's very
Got
excited.
a
He knows that we're
streaker.
going to see. I
Hey, you
know.
wanna
He
say
knows
hi?
that he knows what we're going to see. Does Carver want to come on here and pick who's going to win the whole thing? Look at that. No shirt. He's ready to go. Yeah.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hello, dude. You
Here,
can't hear
let's
me because you have any headphones, so you're good to go.
Here. Hold on. We got this.
Gonna put the OGs on here.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, as
Okay.
they're explaining what's going on here, the tournament is set, the camera is off. This is madness, folks. This
Can
is
you
what
hear
March
Matty
Madness
Ice?
is all about.
Say hi, Matty Ice.
Hi.
Great. That's terrific. That's basically like when James used to do the silent treatment. So I'm excited.
Let's give him a game to pick. Just find a random game.
Well, they're currently profiling the
Pick one.
Sycamores right now.
I want to pick one of those.
Why don't you give him one to pick that we're gonna see, and then we'll have something to look forward to.
All right, let's see. So we have what was the 8-9 game?
8-9 game, I believe, was Mississippi
Oh.
State and Michigan State.
Okay, Carver, listen. Can you say Mississippi State?
Mississippi State.
Can you say Michigan State?
Michigan State.
So Mississippi State and Michigan State. Who's going to win? Michigan State or Mississippi State?
Mississippi State.
Mississippi
Okay.
State.
All right.
All
I mean, to be
right.
fair, it's like you're telling him the same thing. They're
Right.
They sound so
But hey,
similar.
the Bulldogs or the Spartans?
Oh, it's Bulldogs, the Spartans,
Who's going to
Yep.
win, the Bulldogs or Spartans?
the Bulldogs.
Okay,
All right.
he
Yep. All
doubled
right. He's
down.
consistent. He doubled down. He's consistent. I like it. That's what you want. That's all you have to have. Carver, good to see you, buddy. So I was telling you before Carver came down that North Carolina was the last number 1 seed and Tennessee was the first number 2 seed. And it's interesting because we're getting to see both of those, and yet that
Yeah.
could have been flip-flopped and we would have seen a completely different part of the bracket. And that's funny how that works out. But they also highlighted the Sycamores, and the thing that they circled was that 1-4 record against quad 1 teams. And that's interesting that they circle that, but yet their net is so high, and it speaks to what you said earlier. Like, there's so many factors, and I think the thing we need to say that we haven't said yet is that it doesn't matter what you feel about this. The committee has a hard job to do.
Yeah, because there's always every year, man. There's people that deserve to be in that don't get in, and that's just the way it goes. There's people that are pissed, and I think in basketball's so unique because I feel like there are more teams across the country that are relevant than there is in football per se. And football, we're talking about 6 teams for 4 spots, really, by the time it comes down to it. Most times, obviously moving to 12 and apparently 14 here in a couple years. But in basketball, I mean, we're talking 68 teams, and I know there's been talk about expansion happening there and everything else, and
I don't want that.
whatever. I don't either. Because you don't want making the tournament to not mean something. Like right now, it means something, and the more teams you let in, yeah, cool to play in the tournament. Don't get me wrong, but like it diminishes that accomplishment, in my opinion, because for a lot of programs, mid majors, um, just making the tournament is a great accomplishment.
Yeah.
And it has a lot of benefits to the schools, like we talked about earlier, financially, enrollment wise, so on and so forth. But I think that I don't know, man. Like it is a tough job, and I don't envy that job because I guarantee you all those guys would probably say, "Hey, this is an Indiana State team that could win games in this tournament." Uh, but it's like, how do and I'm guessing that these folks in this room have a very they have a really good process they probably go through and say, yeah, this, but this, but this, and that sort of they probably attempt to take the subjectivity out of it as much as possible
Mm-hmm.
and base it on the measurables. And yeah, when you just get into the measurables, because Indiana State's a team that would benefit from the eye test. When you get
Yes.
past the net, they benefit from the eye test. You watch them, and you're like, that's a really good basketball team.
Oh, I agree. That's
Um,
the thing is like if you were to sit a committee member down and be like, watch them against UNI, this is their potential. They should get in with all the other metrics that are there. But again, it's a finite group. Expanding the tournament field, in my opinion, would be a disservice to the tournament, would water it down. And that's not the point. I mean, the thing that Mike Greenberg always used to say is it's not the best way to crown a champion, but it's the most fun.
oh, absolutely, it is. I mean, the NCAA tournament is one of the most exciting things in sports, in my opinion. And I think the first weekend of the NCAA tournament is one of the most exciting weekends in all of sports. And I mean, I know the Super Bowl obviously is big, but that's kind of a totally different beast. But when you're talking about, these teams are going to play 2 games in 3 days, the ones that win, and we're going to see upsets, and you're going to have legends will be made right over the course of this tournament. Names, I remember like, okay, who has any business remembering the name Jimmer Fredette? But I guarantee you college basketball fans out there remember him from his time at BYU when the dude just could not miss from three, especially. I mean, these names and these programs, right? Gonzaga, like, Gonzaga is kind of a household name now, but 20 years ago, they were a Cinderella. And,
Yes.
and it's like, it's that's what March is made of, man. March Madness, and it's super exciting, and there's nothing else like it.
By the way, they're going over the overall seeds for all the teams here, and Drake was number 40. So they were the 40th ranked team in this field, which I think actually is pretty outstanding. I mean, if you think about again, the conference that they play in, it's a one bid conference, and I know people think it should be a 2-bid valley, but like that's pretty awesome and really speaks to the crew that they've put together there. And who knows if they will have DeVries there next year, right? This is a guy who Drake wins a game or two in this tournament, they're getting a phone call about the coach.
Oh, he's already getting phone calls. I mean, he's been named. I mean, there's so many openings that would make that would make sense, even like just that are close to the Midwest. Obviously, he's got Midwest roots. He played at Creighton, was an assistant at Creighton for a long time under Doug McDermott, and not Doug.
Yeah, I know who you're
Doug
talking
was the
about.
kid, the dad, McDermott. Anyways, he's been mentioned. He's been connected to St. Louis. That's open since Michigan's open. I've heard his name thrown around with that. I heard some people throw him out there as an option, maybe at Washington, but questioning if that is a job that would be a good fit because it is out of the Midwest footprint, but they are also coming into the Big Ten. I mean, so there's going to be opportunities out there for both him and Josh Schertz. Josh Schertz has Tennessee ties, and Vanderbilt just opened up. So Josh Schertz being the coach at Indiana State, for those of you who may not know. So, I mean, there's a really good possibility that both of those guys are gone. I mean, and DeVries, I think, has been also connected to West Virginia. So good chance both those guys are gone next year. The interesting piece of it, though, is that with Darren DeVries, you also get Tucker DeVries, and
Yes.
which is great for one season, which is all he has left. But maybe you look at him and say he is where he is because his son's really damn good, but his son only has 1 year left. Like, what's he going to be after that? Um,
Yeah, it's possible. But I mean, in today's day and age, you sometimes need just one season to propel yourself. But there's a lot to look forward to. And they're wrapping up here as they're talking about, the number one seeds and the path forward and all that stuff. But we know our path forward. And just to highlight what we are going to see in Charlotte starting on Thursday, we will have Texas in the winner of UVA, Colorado State, Tennessee, and St. Peter's. We will also see UNC and the winner of Howard and Wagner, and Mississippi State and Michigan State. So we are going to get a ton of great fan bases. It should be amazing. Hopefully we can interact with some people. I know that we're going to try to do a show there at least once. Who knows? Maybe we'll be able to do one on Wednesday. Maybe even actually break down the bracket once we know the play-in winners and stuff like that. And once Thursday at noon hits, you will not see us anywhere close to a microphone at all, because we will be, like I said, injecting March Madness into our veins, snorting it into our noses. I'll be taking it all. No, like it is going to be
snorting
just
it into our noses.
absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I don't care if somebody gives me a mirror with March Madness dust on it, right up there. I'm taking it all. It is going to be an incredible, incredible weekend. I've never seen the first round. So, and that, to me, that's the best part. I can't wait. And I can't wait for one of these teams, like a St. Peter's or whoever, to sneak in, get a little bit hot, and then the crowd gets involved. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to be taking off, and there's my St. Peter shirt right underneath there waiting.
Yeah, maybe we should just paint like
I'm not doing
SP, S on your chest, P on my SP.
No, I'll just get a hat with a patch and just the patch rips off, and it just has like the St. Peter's patch. Yeah, it just changes every
to
time.
whatever team you're rooting for.
The
Yeah.
Homer Simpson meme, as they like to call it. Well, my man, I think it was entertaining kind of getting to see this and react to it. And we don't have any opinions on who's going to win. There's too many teams in here, but I'm looking forward to this week. Do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off here?
Yeah, I'm excited about getting the bracket challenge together, getting some folks involved. I imagine we could probably get some of our Braves Talk fans to participate in such a thing. And then, dude, super excited about going to Charlotte and taking in all the March Madness that we can get over 3 or 4 days, and it'll be here before we know it, man. A couple more sleeps and we're there.
That's correct. And I will post about the bracket challenge on X, and we may do something for Braves Talk with the NIT. Depends on how the NIT selection goes and all that kind of stuff and the logistics, but we'll do what we can. We're going to have a great time in Charlotte. We hope you had a great time tonight, and let the madness begin, folks. Have a good day.